Okay. Good morning, everyone. Sorry about the late hour of our meeting today. I apologize for having it so late, but I think a few people maybe told me they liked it. Um, and I also apologize about the small room. I hope everybody's comfortable. I think we got about the right number in here, so we'll be conscious of that. And I'm going to ask Danny Mathis if he'd open us with prayer. And I want to keep our Vice Chairman Susan Holmes in our prayers. She had a little fall, I think, and hurt her back, and so she's fine. But just keep her in your thoughts today. So, Danny, if you'd have us prayer, please.
Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the beautiful day. We just ask you to watch over Miss Susan. Hope she gets well quick. Father, we just thank you for everyone that's here at this committee meeting, and thank you for the committee. Father, we ask that we would do the things that are pleasing to you and good for Georgia. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Danny. First off, this morning, I want to, you've got in your packet Georgia Propane Commission appointments. The Georgia Propane Commission for Georgia Commodity Commission for Propane is fairly new. We just put those in place, I guess, a couple of years ago, didn't we, Sam? And so they had a couple of appointees roll off and wanted a couple of new commissioners to, and it's our job to appoint those for the Commodity Commission for Propane, and they have suggested these two. My understanding of the Commodity Commission is doing very, very well collecting um, what they're expected and maybe even a little bit more. And I think it's been well received, although it's a sort of a voluntary, I think, at this point, assessment that they assess themselves so much per gallon for propane at the wholesale level. And I would if it's the will of the committee, a motion to appoint these two. You have their resumes here, and they're both kind of different. One's a third generation family business, and Riley Garrett is president of that, and then Tiffany Benjamin is a district area manager for AmeriGas, which is a large marketer of propane. So you've got a kind of diverse two members here to do, and just thought that those two might keep the Commodity Commission for Propane continuing on and strong. So do I have a motion? Got a motion? Second? Got a second. Any other discussion or any other nominees from the committee? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, thank y'all. Appreciate that. I also asked Mike Giles and Abbott Massey to come this morning. Our poultry industry is so big and so important in our state, and I actually wanted to hear from them. And you haven't seen much of them this year. Poultry industry's been represented. Bentley, welcome. And so I asked, I thought Mike would come at this time and sort of give us an overview of our poultry industry. I know they had some real challenges during COVID, keeping their plants open, but I think they came through, managed it well. So Mike, if you could take a few minutes and just tell our committee a little bit about our poultry industry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the microphone on? Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be with you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thought I would bring you just an update on the poultry industry and how we managed through the COVID situation. It was very disruptive, especially there for several weeks at the beginning. But the poultry industry is resilient. We've gone through tough times when the market conditions were difficult and other tough times. So we managed through this fairly well as well. But just wanted to give you a kind of overview of the industry and then talk about some of our challenges going forward. Poultry industry is a $43 billion industry in the state of Georgia, has an economic impact on the state of Georgia in that amount. jobs of over 150,000 Georgians depend on the poultry industry, either directly or indirectly. While we were doing some planning for COVID vaccine, we've done a very detailed census of our poultry industry, and we have 156 locations in Georgia, company locations where there are employees of poultry companies. That's not counting the 3,400 or so poultry farms throughout the state. Those 156 employment locations are in 60 counties in the state of Georgia, and the growers are in over 100 counties throughout the state of Georgia. So just talk about the COVID impact. Last year, about this time, I remember crossover day, we had actually in the industry begun having conversations about how to respond to the COVID pandemic. Many of our companies were already starting to implement policies prior to that March. The date I always remember is March 12th, because that next Thursday, the Friday and Saturday after that is when some of the emergency declarations came out, and of course the legislature suspended. But during that next week is when poultry companies really all came together, and we started discussing what are the best mitigation strategies to protect our employees and also to keep production going as an essential industry in the state. You remember going to the grocery stores and seeing empty food shelves, meat shelves, and it was shocking, I think. And our industry took it very seriously that we had a responsibility to keep feeding Americans through this difficult time. I remember during that time, the advice that was coming from public health, and this was the best advice that we knew at the moment, was to wash your hands thoroughly and don't touch your face. And that's still good advice. But I can tell you that following week after the legislature's suspension, our industry was literally scouring the world looking for face coverings. When that had not really entered into the narrative of what are the things that you do to protect yourself. So that was happening early on. Poultry facilities have some advantage that they have to be cleaned every day anyway because of food safety. So they're cleaned and disinfected in the production areas anyway every day. So they had the expertise and the resources to take that cleaning out through the entire facility. The biggest challenge we had was social distancing. Some of the jobs on processing lines have you closer than 6 feet for some periods of time during the day. And so one of the most innovative things I think the industry did, and again, this was just in a matter of a week or two, partitions had been built around workstations throughout the poultry industry. And that was something that was done. All of these things together, I would say that there was kind of a universal standard adopted by and implemented by the poultry industry within a matter of weeks of when things really changed. And that was well ahead of any kind of federal requirements. OSHA and the CDC came out with guidance for meat packing and poultry facilities, but our industry had already exceeded those voluntarily prior to that. There was a lot of disruption in the supply chains. If you were a facility that made products for a grocery store, tray pack plant, we call it, you couldn't produce enough chicken. If you were a facility, eventually there was a few weeks of disruption for fast food, but if you were a plant that provided product for a fast food chicken place, the names that you all recognize that have drive-up service that's so efficient, you couldn't produce enough chicken. But if you're a facility that grew a little bit larger bird and your chicken was going to sit-down restaurants, hotels, food service in general, there was quite a bit of disruption and prices were impacted. And the thing that really happened, though, that is, I think, a little bit surprising is chicken isn't like making a widget where you got raw material that can sit in a warehouse and you just slow down production. You've got live animals in the field. You've got their parents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents, and it takes some pretty drastic steps to really change production in the poultry industry. So overall, I'll talk about production a little bit more, but overall, production only declined in Georgia 0.9%. In other words, just a little less than 1%. Overall, in the United States, it actually increased for a little bit, and we had some good news on the export front as well. To give you an idea of what this small growth can happen over the poultry industry is not like some commodities where planting, the amount of acres you plant, or drought or other weather conditions will affect you significantly by 10% or so. Poultry industry in Georgia has, over the last 3 years, has averaged about 1.4% growth per year, but that adds up over time. So since 2010, the poultry industry in Georgia has grown 19%. Since the year 2000, we've grown 33%. And since 1990, we've more than doubled, over 116%. So that is just through those small incremental growths every year. Looking at this next year, USDA is projecting slightly better pricing as food services open up and our economy opens up more and people start eating more out. In general, people eat about 50% of their food at home and about 50% out. That's kind of flipped over the past year, but we're expecting, as hotels and people start traveling, that pricing will be going up. On the other side of this, and some of our other farmer friends may like this part of it, but our commodity prices are going up pretty significantly too, and that's our greatest input cost on the live production side, corn and soybeans primarily. So we're seeing those prices going up, so that'll cause some pressure on the industry. Interestingly, these winter storms in Texas and Oklahoma and Arkansas through there caused significant disruption in the poultry industry. And over about a 1-week period, there was a 43% decline in our national poultry production because of the disruptions that happened also in Mississippi as well. So looking at export, this is where there are some bright spots. We had been banned from China since 2015, when China banned exports from the United States to China because we had an avian influenza outbreak during that year. They didn't quite follow the rules there, but they banned the entire United States when avian influenza was found in a wild bird in northwestern part of the United States, and that ban remained in place really through last January. So last January 2020, we re-entered the China market, and just within a few months, China was again our second largest market. If you look at the percentage increase from 2019 to 2020 of exports to China was a 38,000% increase in exports to China. So Mexico continues to be our number one market. Just to give you an idea of the scale and the difference, Mexico, we export 683,000 metric tons to Mexico, and China we export 501,000 metric tons. So China has quickly become a major buyer of poultry again, and that's been very helpful to our industry. The top markets in the world now are Mexico, China, Taiwan, Cuba. Sometimes people are surprised that we send Cuba so much poultry to Cuba. It's our fourth largest market. Vietnam, Canada, and Angola. Just now, I'll just kind of switch to challenges. And usually when we talk about challenges in the poultry industry, and there are many, it's times when commodity prices go up and we have a difficult time adjusting to them. Animal diseases like avian influenza, which fortunately we haven't had much of in Georgia, but those are challenges. But I'll really just talk about one challenge, and this the most significant problem and challenge we have in our poultry industry today, and that is labor. Every single poultry facility in the state of Georgia could hire people today. And in some cases, 1,000-person plant could hire 100 people today, tomorrow. They're hiring every day. This became even more challenging during 2020 as our unemployment claims against our companies went up dramatically. Now keep in mind, no poultry company in Georgia laid off a single employee without cause, but there were significant number of unemployment claims made against the company. In some cases, that had to do with COVID. It might be the person was the caretaker of someone that was vulnerable, or they had children they had to take care of that couldn't go to school. But we also had claims against companies for people who didn't even work at the company. We had claims against in the names of the CEOs of the companies. So that's a issue of just working through those appeals, and our commissioner, labor commissioner, and the Department of Labor have had a tough job, and they've been overwhelmed with that whole system, but have done all they could to work through, expeditiously with those appeals. But labor is our biggest challenge, and I think will continue to be. We'll work more towards automation in the future, but that's not something that can happen overnight. But we need more people. We pay. Our industry pays well over minimum wage, probably roughly double minimum wage plus benefits, and we take care of our people, and they're good job opportunities. So that's something that we'll have always dealt with as a challenge, and I know most businesses do, but 2020 was even more serious in that area. So I'll close with that. Be glad to answer any questions anybody has about the poultry industry.
Thank you, Mike, for bringing that. And I would open it up for questions from our members. Representative Bentley, what number? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to apologize for my grand entrance into the meeting this morning. I just want to make sure that you knew I was voting in favor of the propane commission.
Okay.
Because propane is very important to me, because I have several companies in my home county in Taylor, just as well as poultry being very important to me, as I have Tyson in Dooley County. Thank you for your really good report of the poultry industry since COVID, and I was really surprised to learn of Mexico's being one of the number one export country. So thank you for that really good report. But my question is relating to during COVID, and you mentioned your challenges are retaining employees. Did the poultry industry pay hazard pay during the time of COVID last year? Because I remember hearing a lot of concerns from constituents, not about poultry, but just concerns from constituents about hazard pay and getting a better understanding of who's actually entitled to hazardous pay. Can you address that for me?
Well, in terms of hazard pay, every company approached their benefits differently. In the beginning, there was, they wanted to make sure that if someone had any symptom of a cold or flu, or even allergy that could be COVID, to make sure that they stayed home and received pay. And there have been a number of different approaches to making sure that employees are taken care of, through the healthcare services they need and all. I would say in terms of hazard pay, I think just in general, pay is going up slightly because just of supply and demand. And then also now under our vaccine plans, which is something I didn't mention, our companies have been really preparing for the last few months to be ready to do on-site vaccination clinics free of charge, and a number of companies are providing incentives to employees to encourage them to take the vaccine. So our companies, we believe that people who are working are less likely to go out and make appointments and go to public vaccination sites. And so our companies have spent a lot of time being prepared to be on-site vaccination clinics to make those available to employees. So we're ready to go with that.
I'm looking forward to my tour of Tyson after session.
Well, let's do that. I would love it.
Thank you, Mr.
I'll be
Chairman.
there.
Okay, yes, sir.
Thank you. And I'd like to follow up. I just really appreciate Mike and your industry working to try to vaccinate our essential workers, essential farm workers. And I think that's really came to light during this whole COVID, how much we depended on our food supply chain. And the poultry industry is what we call an integrated industry, and any blip or any shutdown in any one part of that industry affects the whole rest of it. And that's really how our whole food chain kind of works. And you walk in the grocery stores back last March, April, and didn't see chickens and didn't see some other meat. It's really disturbing. Yeah. And so it shows you how easily our food supply chain can be disrupted. And I really appreciate our governor and industries, food, and our ag commissioner, Black in the back. Thank you for being here. How you worked with all our ag industries throughout our state, whether it's growing or processing, to try to keep that food chain going. And I think we did a really, really good job. And I hope we all pat ourselves on the back at some point. And I'm not going to say anything else, but I want to recognize Abbott Massey in the back, who, if y'all don't know Abbott Massey, you need to know this man. He's a giant in the poultry industry and a giant under this gold dome here for many, many years. And just thank you for all the work you've done for poultry industry and agriculture and community and state, UGA as well. Thank you. Thank you, Abbott. I see another mic. Donahue.
Mr. Chairman, you actually took what I was going to do is say a legend in the industry. For the 30-something years I was in the industry, I remember he was the frontier guy. He was a guy out front, has the greatest memory of anybody you'll ever meet, that could sit there and you could tell him your name one time. If he doesn't know it, he'll go back and tell you your name and what you did 22 years ago. And I just am thankful to see you here today. I just want to make sure I got to echo that.
I can tell you, everybody in our industry and the trade association profession too feel the same way.
So thank you, Mike. Appreciate that update. And if we need anything else, we'll get back with you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Our next order of business is SB 260, and Senator Chairman Harper has come back. We've put our heads together with a few changes, and I know some of you have received some information, and I just want to make sure we clarify what we're doing, what we're going forward, and some things, and ask Chairman Harper to come back and with a little change to this bill and talk about it. So floor is yours.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, you should have LC 441739S, and as Chairman Dickey alluded, he and I and others have worked together on this to try to address some things and maybe put some additional provisions in here to help clarify what we're doing and what the intent of this is and what the intent of sole amendments are. So you'll see lines 30, 31, 32, and 33 are the new provisions that are added. That's the only thing that has changed. Basically, it would require the owner and operator of a farm to, they have to have a site-specific nutrient management plan. And they'll have to make that available for inspection to the department at their request. So basically, that's what we're doing. So by doing that, by putting that plan in place, this is something that we can do. This is something that is being done, and it clarifies that it helps ensure that the folks that are doing it right continue to do it right, and the folks that aren't doing it right do it right. And at the end of the day, I think that's what it all boils down to. And it just ensures that this is a a successful process in that regard, Mr. Chairman, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'm not going to rehash all the conversation we had last time. I was just going to speak specifically to that one provision, but I think this will help address a lot of the concerns that have been being raised because by having this plan, it takes a good bit to go through this plan and get this plan. By having this plan in place, it shows where you're going, why you're doing it, and how you're remediating it going forward, which I think is important. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. You do have a couple questions. Chairman Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was looking, this is a short bill, but I was looking for a definition of soil amendments. It says industrial byproducts. That could be anything from plastics to,
No, it wouldn't include plastics.
okay, what would it be? Is it chemicals? What is it?
It is not chemicals.
Then give me some examples. I was looking for a definition so I know what it is we're allowing.
You got a good example you can give them? I'll defer to
Okay.
Representative Donahue.
Is primary products of poultry companies. And with that, these are just some notes, but now it's the product of wastewater and pretreatment systems, often called DAF. It's skimming secondary poultry nutrients, and the product primarily is water, but it does have some nutrient value. And this has changed a good bit because this machine that puts it down, actually, if you're aerating the ground, it goes down into the ground as it comes forward to push the nutrients down. 1057 corrected a lot of the bad things last year that we were seeing on some of the places that we put down, but it's basically, that's the way I understand it from doing a little research on it.
Okay. Why wasn't there just a definition in there? I just felt like it should have said, that's what it is. It leaves it wide open and it talks about how 100 feet in width and talking about the buffer size. It's going to seep into the ground. It's going to have some byproduct smell. And is any of that addressed in this?
So it is defined in the code, and I'm trying to pull it up. I don't have it sitting in front of me. If you'll give me just a second, I will find it. It'll take me a minute to get there. 12. And we can, because we defined it last year in House Bill 1057, but I don't remember what the exact definition was. Let's see.
Commissioner's got it.
I mean, if somebody else has it, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to defer to them. Here we go. Soil amendment means any substance intended for changing the characteristics of soil or other growth medium for the purpose of increasing the penetration of water or air, increasing water holding capacity, alleviating or decreasing soil compaction, or otherwise altering the soil or medium in such manner that the physical properties are materially enhanced. The term soil amendment does not include substances for which nutritional claims are made, such as but not limited to commercial fertilizers, lime materials, or unmanipulated vegetable or animal manures. That is the definition of soil amendment in the Georgia Code.
Okay. Who's got mic 9? Chairman Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the nutrient management plan, is this something that the landowner and the farmer prepares on their own, or is this something they're going to have to spend a lot of money on to obtain? Tyler?
Are you asking me
Yeah.
or okay. So this could be something that the farmer could work with the distributor that's applying the product on their plant, on their property. The distributor in some cases already is doing this, but not in all. This would the farmer or the property owner could work with that distributor to have that management plan for their own specific property. And this is something that they could work together on to address.
So the farmer or the landowner won't be necessarily burdened with the full expense. of
Not
having to pay
necessarily.
for
There
it.
would be that, there could be that joint agreement between the distributor and the landowner.
Okay.
That was something that was brought up in concerns when we were having this discussion initially, and I think it's addressed in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? Chairman Tankersley.
Senator Harper.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to ask, and I know we don't want to rehash everything, but we have had complaints about the smell.
Yes, ma'am.
And I guess maybe I have a two-part question. I wonder, how was the waste material from the poultry plants handled in the past? Because now we're seeing a lot of people that are, have a lot of interest in this, and we need to help our poultry industry. They are important to us in the state, but at the same time, I think we as legislators and representing the people have to be concerned about the quality of life and how, you move in the country and think you're going to breathe clean air and not air that particularly smells. It's not like putting out chicken manure for your garden in a couple of days, that smell's gone. But if people are in earnest buying up big tracts of land and putting those tracts of land together, and even if they move it around from field to field, how, there's going to be a constant smell. It's not like you're putting it out one day and you may not do it again. I mean, this is going to be.
I would, and we could defer to some others in here who may have better knowledge about this than I do, but if done properly and done correctly and done in accordance to a plan, like what we're adding in here, you should not have those same issues arise. And a lot of the problems that arise, and the reason we had House Bill 1057 last year, it goes back to what I keep saying. It's because of the bad actors in the industry that were not doing it appropriately. They were not doing it right. They were not abiding by what they should have been abiding by to begin with. That was why we passed 1057 to address those. The folks that are doing it right, that are abiding by the regulations, abiding by the environmental regulations, the department's regulations, I don't think you see those same issues arise in those particular areas. In regards to how they were doing it before, again, there's folks in here that could speak to this better than I can, but I believe that this is how it's been being done for a number of years, and it just so happened that we had a couple of bad actors that done it wrong, and all of a sudden we've had this big issue arise just recently. So this is something that's been done for quite some time. I think it just the problem arose out of those who were doing it the wrong way.
I'm sorry. Is there a limit as to how much can be applied?
I think that's the purpose of that plan,
Okay.
that nutrient management plan.
Okay.
And that's the reason I'll keep going back to that, because I think that nutrient management plan is important, because that nutrient management plan is site specific to that field. You'll pull those soil samples, depending upon what those soil samples are, depending upon what that cover crop may be in that particular field, would depend upon what and how much you may provide in that particular location of this particular, whatever that soil amendment may be. And that's the importance of that plan. And that plan will help address, I believe, a lot of those concerns, because it will alleviate the over injection, so to speak, and which will help alleviate some of the concerns I think you raised a minute ago. And plus, I think when you do it the right way, this was brought up when we discussed this last week. This is injected in, it's under the ground, under the dirt, when it's done correctly. And so anyway, you act like you might have another question.
Yeah, one thing leads into the other. So is there a perk test done on this land? I mean, I'm thinking about all the days we had rain. So the land can only absorb so much
That's correct.
liquid. And do we take those? I mean, is that included in
I
part
would
of the
think
plan?
that would be part of that plan, because anytime, I think from just a regular farming practices, a lot of the guys that are in here know that when it's pretty soluble or at a certain extent, there are certain things that I'm not going to apply either on my cotton or my corn or in preparing my dirt to get it ready in normal farming practices. That would be a normal nutrient management plan for your normal crops. I would argue that that would be the same case in this regard, and that management plan will help address a lot of those problems, which is why we come up with this language to help address a lot of that going forward.
So one further question, and I'll quit. So there's a plan, but do we have regulations that will cover a lot of?
So the Department of Agriculture and Environmental Protection Division are tasked with addressing any issues that fall outside the confines of what the person is able to do. And I think it's important to point out again that we do have money in the budget to fund a couple of positions in the Department of Agriculture that are specific to this issue alone. Obviously, the Department of Ag can work in concert with EPD to address those that may be doing something that they shouldn't do. I think an important example of that is the ladies that testified last week. I think that was a perfect example where we had a bad actor that were doing things they were not supposed to do, and the Environmental Protection Division actually come down on that individual quite hard. There are policies, there are rules and regs that are in place. We actually gave the Department of Ag that authority last year when we passed 1057 to more adequately be able to address this specific issue within the department.
And I will just close by saying, I hope we do all that's possible through regulations, rules, or plans that protect people,
Yes, ma'am.
their environment, and animals.
I agree. And
raise.
I'll reiterate what I said last week, if I may, Mr. Chairman. You have my commitment. I think I said this to a number of members of the committee last week. You have my continued commitment to Representative Bentley that I'm willing to work on that going forward, and however we can address that, I'm willing to work with you, Representative Tankersley, in that regard.
Thank you, Senator.
Chairman Corbett.
I'll wait.
Okay.
Mr. Lady, thanks for that.
Representative Camp.
Thank you, Chairman Tankersley. You did answer a lot of questions, asked questions that gave a lot of great answers. I think one aspect that hasn't really been brought up today is the fact that this is a soil amendment, meaning it's adding to the soil, not taking away from the soil or detriment to the soil. And the fact that we've added the paragraph C about having to have the nutrient management plan, that is very specific. Anyone who's ever done any kind of soil analysis on their own property, one area might be very different from another area, just a few feet apart. And we have the capacity now to make sure that we're putting exactly what's needed into that soil to make the most food and fiber. So I appreciate the language being added to this bill. And again, this is to improve the land, not to cause a detriment to the land.
That's correct.
Thank you. Representative Mathis.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Harper. I reiterate what you're saying, Chairman Tankersley. How, and maybe this is a question that Commissioner Black can answer. How does the Ag Department and the EPD work together on sharing information when you have those bad apples? Because I know there's some good ones, but we do have the bad apples. How is that information shared, and what actions are taken if you find out we have these bad parties?
Would you, what number is that? Commissioner, what number?
10 or 2, he said.
It's halfway in between.
Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, we're on to my friend, Representative Mathis. It ranges, our cooperation ranges from joint inspections to joint for enforcement actions to just sharing what are you hearing. Now, prior to House Bill 1057, that was a very difficult, if not impossible thing to do, because there would be things that they would know or things that we would know, but the structure of the law didn't allow you to do it, didn't allow us to share with each other. So, for example, right now, we have 3 enforcement actions that were taken last week. One of them is severe, one is a warning, and one is a cease and desist. And EPD is very aware of all 3 of them. And in fact, by the virtue of us doing one of them actually clears the way for EPA to do their, EPD to do theirs. And that is pending within days. If it doesn't happen, if it didn't happen today, it's coming. Because we had to do something first, then they could follow behind us. And that is, members of this body have heard me say this 2 or 3 times in recent hearings, but it has taken place. And to the tune of, we got a 47-page reply from a lawyer on Friday.
Again, one other thing. In my district, we have the same problems that you were talking about, concerns that it's not agriculture related. It's sludge brought in from a sewage system from another that's put out on land. And I have a problem with, I want to make sure the agriculture is above and beyond doing what we need to do, because I'm all in agriculture, because I live out in the country. I smell that nice chicken litter, and it opens your sinuses up pretty good. But, you know, I understand those type things. But the 2 ladies that had the testimony the other day, that would be awful. And I know that's just a few bad apples. But I appreciate those answers that we're working together with the 2 entities so we can come to a solution, because it's just going to be more of it the more this grows. We heard Mike talking about all this, and I just don't want agriculture to get a bad name. Because that's in our field. That's what we want to do. So I appreciate this, but I want to make sure we're working together with these 2 folks to get these problems solved. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
We'll take maybe a couple more questions. Who's on mic 9? Is that you, Chairman Watson?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to add a comment to the committee that commercial fertilizer has not doubled yet, but it's on its way to there. So I know every farmer in Georgia is spreading all the chicken litter they can get their hands on right now as a substitute, and they're looking for a lot of amendments. And I don't know what the nutrient content of any of this stuff is, but I know everybody is looking for alternative fertilizers and alternative nutrients just to stay in business. So that's it.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah.
Chairman, to Chairman Watson's point, I think he brings up a really good point. I know in some cases, these particular soil amendments, as long as they were done in concert with a nutrient management plan, have been known to save ag producers across our state thousands, tens of thousands of dollars in fertilizer cost, because this is an addition that does have nutrient value that producer can use. To your point, Representative Mathis, that producer can use to produce their crop going forward and actually save money on the commercial fertilizer side. So this does help the agricultural industry. I understand your point, and I hope you would know, me being an active producer and farmer, that I'm going to do everything I can to make sure we address that and we don't give agriculture a bad rap. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. We'll take one more question here. I see Mike 8, who is Floor Leader Laricia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Harper. And I was just going to say, with the addition of lines 30 through 33, I don't see how we could be any more fair about trying to come up with some rules and a site-specific nutrient management plan, that this wouldn't be a good balance between everybody. And at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you for that. Let's hold on just a minute. I got one other question. Okay, thank you. Representative Scoggins, we got a motion. We got a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
And Representative Mitchell is online. Thank you, Representative Mitchell, for joining us. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator
Yes, sir.
Harper. And,
Appreciate the work together on this, and thank the committee for
bringing this back.
working it together. Yes,
Better
sir.
bill.
Thank you.
Here, Secretary Meeks, have you got a guest back there for us?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. John William came up today to spend the day with us here at the Capitol, and appreciate him being able to attend the committee meeting this morning.
Hey! I'm glad there's another set of eyes on you today. So, here, no other business. Committee adjourned.
Probably going to have Win the governor.